Hey, what's up everyone? We're going to talk about the developer over at Arrowhead because he has just confirmed that they are looking into setting up public test servers. The CEO of Helldivers 2 has discussed making enemies less spongy, and we'll be discussing more than just that. If at any point you find the video helpful, give it a thumbs up. Let's start off with the private test servers. As you all know, Evil Boss is a developer for Arrowhead, and despite some of his conversation with players yesterday, it seems there is some great information about the PTR or PTS. You know, public test servers or public test realm, whichever one you prefer to call it. What we have here is a conversation between a member and the developer. The Discord member asked, just giving my 2 cents, but I think if you start trying to balance things before they come out too much, it usually has the effect of seriously hurting hype for new stuff. It's generally better to start out a little overtuned and slightly nerfed so people have strong weapons to get excited for. If like Polar Patriot comes out and no one cares, that is worse than the people being upset about a weapon being merged. Then the developer Evil Boss replied with, we do try to balance, but if just 10k players play an hour with it, they have done more playtesting than a QA person does for years. And I don't think releasing one warbond with super balanced weapons every 5 years would be very good either. With what the developer has said here is absolutely correct. I believe he's right. If there was a good amount of player testing, this would be far better than just letting a QA person test it. Now, the same exact Discord member replied to that comment by saying, have you guys ever considered something like PTR for weapon balancing? Might not work due to the server infrastructure, but still. The developer responded with, there are internal discussions how to get some wider testing done. There's another fella here that asked this same question essentially by saying, have you thought about giving some limited people access to upcoming changes like a closed open beta or even content creators so they can get relevant info out more easily? And Evil Boss replied with, that's one alternative that has popped up in internal discussions. And lastly, another member asked, okay, let me ask this, why is it you think that the team has run into so many changes that the players dislike or are polarized on? If the QA is doing a banged up, thorough test job, what is it that from a lot of players' perspective, there are so many overblown and punishing nerfs that seem to exist only to kick the weapons that work further down into uselessness? Apologies once again for bias. The developer is advocating for public test servers, and this was his response. So the total dev time of a weapon gets more testing by the community in the first 5 minutes of its release. 100k people rack up a lot of time very quickly. And we can't afford to have even 500 dedicated QA people. And that's why I advocate for some sort of PTS or wider tests for weapons before release. The developers are definitely planning something with the public test servers, and I think this would help Helldivers out quite a lot. The feedback as of late on the Warbond is not good. The only one I have a positive thing to say about is the Stilled Veteran Warbond. There have been some complaints about certain issues, and to be completely honest, the recent Polar Patriot Warbond is questionable. And of course, I did not like it. This is subjective, of course, yet when I posted my review, a majority of you felt the same about it. Yet, anyways, I think testing servers would help out so much with weapon balance, players' feedback, bugs, glitches, and so on. What are your thoughts on the public test servers? Do you believe this would make a huge difference or not? Let me know down below. Continuing on, the next member essentially asks, what difficulty level do the developers play on to determine if the stratagem or whatever it is needs to be nerfed or buffed? This player asked, I had a question in what difficulty do the developers play to determine whether a weapon requires a buff or a nerf? In my opinion, balancing should be based on experience gained at the highest difficulty levels. A-9. Evil Boss, the dev, responded, depends on occasion. If I'm in the playtest session with HR reps, a level designer with a massive cold, and someone on a busy phone call, we will probably go quite low. When QA are playing together, they pretty much roll through all difficulties. Alright, let's pause for a second here. He mentions that they will test at low levels if they're with HR reps or if someone's busy or even dealing with some sort of sickness. I'm not trying to over speculate, but maybe that's what happened with the recent Polar Patriot Warbond. Perhaps there was less testing. However, it's fair to say that he also mentioned they will run through all difficulties with QA. I'm just wondering how often they did that with QA. Moving on with the conversation here, the same Discord member asked, in that case, wouldn't it make more sense to test weapon power adjustments in high difficulty situations to assess their ability to respond to various threats such as armored enemies or outnumbered situations? And lastly, the developer responded with, and you think a playtest session with a group of 4 people running a low difficulty mission is the final say in balancing, and QA gets completely ignored when steamrolling any mission, there's an infinite amount of playtesting hours a thing can get before it gets added to the game, and the person who made the thing is usually chasing people for feedback. So if you have watched my previous video, then you probably have been wondering since then how many people actually test the game. It truly depends on the scenario, as the developer mentioned. This can range from testing on lower difficulties if, for example, a level designer is sick. Now, on the other hand, they will test on higher difficulties if with QA. Interesting. I would say we definitely or desperately need test servers after hearing that. It's not necessarily bad, but it just sounds like there's not enough testing being done. What do you all think? Okay, what we have next is a response on X, formerly known as Twitter, from the Arrowhead CEO talking about possibly weakening enemies because they might be too spongy. There's also a user who asked this right here. A way you can buff primaries without directly buffing damage is to give every weapon a 20% larger clip size. Feels like almost every gun needs to be reloaded way too quickly, and reloading is one of the worst feelings in the game when in combat. The interesting response from the CEO can be found right here, and he responds with, can increase magazine size without changing the 3D model. That wouldn't make any sense. Also, at large cap Stanag equivalent mag for Liberator 45 rounds is already on the upper end. Enemies might be too spongy. Well, so it appears we are at the cap here with the rounds. The Liberator is currently at 45 rounds, and that's the quote upper end from what the CEO has mentioned, and I'm not sure what I would like to see more of. We cannot have larger rounds because they would have to redo the 3D model, which I don't see why they would need to. Maybe just increase it by 10 or so rounds, something like that, so it doesn't look like a banana clip is hanging out. I'm not a developer, so I obviously do not know anything about the development side. And as for spongy enemies, I'm not sure if that's a problem. I don't feel like it is, but maybe the developers should revert to how things were before the significant nerfs. I felt as if players were happier with the way things were prior to everything being changed. With that information to the side, we now are going to talk about spits. I know, you guys are probably sick of it at this point. But you guys also were wondering, where was the image from yesterday's video? The reason why I did not include it in the video is because, one, I had already recorded my voice, and then at the end of the video, I was just like, man, why include this? It's not helpful, really, but I will include it now to give you guys some context behind it because you guys were wondering where's the image, and here it is right here. Except the only difference now is that it's not 5,000 signatures, it's 8,020 signatures. Now, as I am making this video, it's May 10th, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I honestly couldn't tell you what it's gonna be about, an hour from now. Feel free to check it out. What we are now going to talk about is major orders. I'm not sure if you guys knew about this. I wasn't aware of this. Apparently you can actually pitch a major order to the developers, community managers, Arrowhead, really. And this is what this user said to Twinbeard. Is there a specific place I could pitch a major order where your team can see it and review it? The Discord moves so fast, and just between you and me, I think my idea is pretty cool. The community manager, Twinbeard, responded on Twitter by saying, DM me, either here or on Discord. So yeah, right now, Arrowhead will apparently take some of your ideas if you can actually pitch something really cool. Potentially, we might just see a major order that was created by the community, which I think that's awesome to see. I believe last time I even talked about this as well with the cape. I would love to see more community designs in Helldivers 2 because it would just make things really cool and interesting. Some of the things that you guys actually come up with. And there you go, this is your Helldivers 2 news. We're now going to talk about the top 3 comments from the previous video. If you would like to be featured in the next video, comment down below. Starting off with number 1, we have Crypto, and this person says, Arrowhead needs to get their employees in check going on pissing matches with randos on Discord. It's genuinely pathetic. This is a response from the last video when the developer got into a heated discussion. The second top comment can be found right here by John, and he says, is this the same guy who did Hello Neighbor 2? He had awful balancing that killed that game, and he fought the community there as well. Absolute clown. And the last comment here is by a user named Kyle, and he says, 10 hours of testing, you mean 40 minutes? Which is how long it took everyone to realize that the eruptor was reduced to a water gun. And there you go, those are your top 3 comments from the previous video. If you would like to be mentioned in the next video, comment down below. Thank you guys for the support, and I will see you all in the next video.